The crimson sun of Proxima Centauri cast long shadows across the crystalline domes of New Eden as Dr. Sarah Chin made her morning rounds through the agricultural sector. The colony had been humanity's greatest achievement, a thriving settlement of 50,000 souls nestled in the habitable zone of Alpha Centauri's smallest star. For 30 years, they had transformed this alien world into something resembling home. "Morning harvest looks promising," called out Marcus Webb, the chief botanist, his weathered hands inspecting a cluster of modified wheat that had adapted remarkably well to the alien soil. "The mineral content in Sector 7 is off the charts. We're seeing yields 30% higher than last season." Sarah nodded, her tablet displaying the colony's vital statistics. New Eden wasn't just surviving, it was flourishing. The atmospheric processors hummed quietly in the distance, maintaining the delicate balance that allowed humans to breathe freely outside the domes. Children played in the parks, their laughter echoing off the transparent aluminum walls that protected them from the occasionally violent storms that swept across the planet's surface. "Any word from the Geological Survey team?" Sarah asked, watching a group of teenagers kick a soccer ball across the central plaza. They had been born here, these young people. This was their world as much as Earth had ever been humanity's. "They're excited about the lithium deposits they found in the northern mountains," Marcus replied, pulling up a holographic display from his wrist communicator. "Commander Torres thinks we might have enough rare earth elements to power the colony for centuries. Maybe even enough to start shipping back to Earth." That was the dream, wasn't it? To become self-sufficient, then profitable. To prove that humanity could spread among the stars and thrive. The colony's ship Endeavour had brought them here decades ago, carrying the hopes of a world that was slowly dying from overconsumption and climate change. New Eden was supposed to be the first step toward a brighter future. Sarah's communication device chimed with an incoming message from the orbital monitoring station. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison's face appeared on the small screen, his expression unusually tense. "Dr. Chin, we need you in the command center immediately. We've detected something unusual on the long-range sensors." The urgency in his voice made Sarah's stomach clench. Jake was one of the calmest people she knew, a veteran of Earth's stellar navy who had volunteered for the colony mission to be closer to his daughter Emily, who worked in the engineering department. "What kind of unusual?" Sarah asked, already heading toward the command center at the heart of the colony. "Ships," Jake said grimly. "Lots of them. And they're not human." Sarah broke into a run. The command center was a hive of activity when Sarah arrived. Technicians worked frantically at their stations while holographic displays showed the outer reaches of the Alpha Centauri system. Jake stood at the central console, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the tactical display. "Show me," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake manipulated the controls, and the display zoomed in on a section of space near the system's edge. Sarah gasped. Dozens of ships, each one massive and angular, were moving in formation toward the inner system. They were unlike anything in human databases, all sharp edges and brutal efficiency, constructed from what appeared to be dark metal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. "First contact," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the colony's xenobiologist. "We always wondered when this day would come. These aren't exploration vessels," Jake said, highlighting one of the larger ships. "Look at the configuration. Those are weapon ports, and those protrusions are likely missile arrays. This is a war fleet." Sarah felt the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. As colony administrator, she had prepared for many contingencies, equipment failures, natural disasters, even civil unrest. But an alien invasion had always seemed like something from the old science fiction movies, not a real threat. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. "At their current velocity, approximately 18 hours, Jake replied. "But they're accelerating. I think they've detected our colony." The main screen flickered as communications specialist Amy Rodriguez worked to enhance the signal. Suddenly, a new voice crackled through the speakers, deep, guttural, speaking in a language that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Can you translate that?" Sarah asked. Elena was already running the audio through the linguistic analysis computer. It's structured language, definitely intelligent. But the phonemes are unlike anything in our databases. Wait. She paused, listening intently. There's a pattern. They're repeating something. The voice came again, followed by what sounded like responses from other ships. Elena's face went pale as the computer began to piece together meaning from context and repetition. It's not a greeting, Elena said quietly. It's a battle cry. They're talking about taking our resources, our world. They call themselves the Gruk. And they're not here to negotiate. Sarah felt her world tilt. Everything they had built, everything they had sacrificed for, was about to be tested by an enemy they never saw coming. Get me a secure channel to Earth, Sarah ordered. Full encryption. And send out a general alert to all colonists. We need to prepare for the worst. 3 systems away, on the dying world of Gruktar, Warlord Vashka stood before the Council of Claws, his massive form silhouetted against the red glow of the planet's failing sun. The Gruk were a proud warrior race, their bodies built for conflict, 7 feet tall, with thick, muscular frames covered in chitinous armor that had evolved over millions of years. Their faces were brutal and practical, with protruding lower jaws filled with sharp teeth and small, intelligent eyes that gleamed with predatory cunning. The soft skins have made their nest rich, Vashka growled, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Their world has the rare metals we need to power our ships, the fertile soil to feed our young, and the water to sustain our expansion. Elder Thrackmore, ancient even by Gruk standards, shifted uncomfortably on his throne of polished bone. The humans have shown no aggression toward us. Perhaps there is another way. The time for weakness is over. Vashka roared, slamming his massive fist on the council table. Our world dies. Our young starve. The other clans look to us for leadership, and you speak of negotiation with prey? The truth was undeniable. Gruktar was dying. Centuries of industrial expansion and warfare had stripped the planet of its resources. The population had grown beyond the world's ability to sustain them, and the other worlds in their system were barren rocks or gas giants that offered little hope for salvation. The humans had appeared in the neighboring system like a gift from the war gods themselves. Their settlement was small but rich, their technology inferior but their world perfect for Gruk colonization. Best of all, they were weak, no significant military presence, no warships, just a peaceful colony ripe for conquest. The fleet is ready, reported General Krolthak, his scarred face bearing the marks of a dozen battles. 300 vessels, 20,000 warriors. We can take their world in a single strike. Vashka smiled, revealing rows of predatory teeth. Then we take it. The humans will serve us as laborers, or they will feed our hatchlings. Either way, their resources will power the expansion of the Gruk Imperium. The council erupted in roars of approval. The die was cast. Sarah stood before the gathered colonists in the main assembly hall, looking out at faces that ranged from confused to terrified. Children clung to their parents while the older residents, those who remembered the journey from Earth, sat with grim determination. These people had already sacrificed everything once to reach this world. Now they were being asked to do it again. The approaching fleet is hostile, Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustics. We have approximately 12 hours before they reach our system. All non-essential personnel are to report to the emergency shelters. Essential systems will be maintained by skeleton crews. Dr. Martinez, the colony's chief engineer, stood up. What about the orbital defense platforms? Can't we modify them to serve as weapons? Jake shook his head. They're designed for asteroid deflection, not military engagement. We might be able to slow them down, but against a fleet that size. He didn't need to finish the sentence. We're not soldiers, called out someone from the back. We're scientists, farmers, engineers. How are we supposed to fight an alien army? Sarah felt the weight of despair settling over the crowd. They were right, of course. New Eden had been built as a peaceful colony, not a military outpost. Their greatest weapons were mining lasers and construction equipment, We fight because we have to, Sarah said firmly. Because our children deserve a future, and because Earth needs to know what happened here. Jake, what's the status on the quantum communication array? Still online, but barely, Jake replied. The aliens are jamming most of our frequencies, but I think I can punch through with a high-power burst. It'll probably burn out the transmitter, but we'll get one message through. Then we make it count, Sarah said. Emily, I need you to compile everything we know about these aliens, their technology, their capabilities, their weaknesses. If Earth is going to have a chance, they need to know what they're facing. Emily Morrison, Jake's daughter, nodded grimly. She was young, barely 25, but she had inherited her father's analytical mind and her mother's determination. I'll get it ready. As the crowd dispersed to their assigned positions, Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Marcus, his usually cheerful face now etched with worry. You know we can't win this, he said quietly. No, Sarah agreed. But we can buy time. And maybe, just maybe, we can save some of our people. The first Gruk ships appeared as dark silhouettes against the starfield, their hulls absorbing the light of Proxima Centauri like hungry shadows. Sarah watched from the command center as the alien fleet took up positions around New Eden, their formation precise and professional. They're not attacking immediately, Jake observed, studying the tactical display. They're surrounding us first, cutting off any escape routes. Smart, Sarah muttered. They want to make sure none of us get away to warn Earth. The main screen flickered as an incoming transmission overwhelmed their communication systems. The image that appeared made several technicians gasp in horror. Warlord Vashka's brutish face filled the screen, his small eyes glittering with malevolent intelligence. Humans of the small world, he said, his voice a guttural growl that the translation software struggled to process. I am Vashka, warlord of the Gruk Imperium. You have built upon our world. Our world? Sarah stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. This is human territory. We've done nothing to threaten you. Vashka's laugh was like grinding stone. Your weakness is threat enough. You take resources that belong to the strong. You breathe air that should fill Gruk lungs. You will surrender now, or we will take what we want from your corpses. We won't surrender, Sarah said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. This is our home. We'll defend it. Then you will die, Vashka replied. You have one of your hours to reconsider. Then we begin the harvest. The transmission cut out, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Emily, is that message ready? Sarah asked. Almost, Emily replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard. I'm compressing everything we've learned about their technology, their tactics, their language patterns. But there's so much data. Do the best you can, Sarah interrupted. Jake, prepare the transmission array. We're going to send everything we can to Earth Command. As the technicians worked frantically to prepare the message, Sarah looked out at the colony she had helped build. In the distance, she could see families saying goodbye to each other, children being led to the underground shelters, and maintenance crews working to fortify the essential systems. They were going to lose. She knew it, and everyone else knew it too. But they were going to make the aliens pay for every inch of ground. The quantum communication array hummed with dangerous energy as Jake pushed it far beyond its design limits. The massive dish, originally built for routine communications with Earth, was now being used to punch a message through the jamming fields of the Gruk fleet. Power levels at 150% of normal, reported technician Sam Peterson, sweat beading on his forehead. The focusing crystals are starting to crack. Hold it together just a little longer, Jake muttered, fine-tuning the transmission parameters. Sarah, we need to send this now. Sarah stood at the communication console, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to record what might be humanity's last message from New Eden. Behind her, Emily worked frantically to compress the alien technology data into a format that could be transmitted across the vast distances between the stars. Earth Command, this is Colony Administrator Sarah Chin of New Eden, Alpha Centauri System, she began, her voice strong despite the fear in her eyes. We are under attack by a hostile alien force calling themselves the Gruk Imperium. They have a fleet of approximately 300 warships and are technologically superior to our current capabilities. She paused, listening to the sound of distant explosions as the Gruk began their preliminary bombardment of the colony's outer defenses. The aliens are resource-hungry and expansionist. Their home world is dying, and they view our colony as a source of materials and territory. They do not appear interested in negotiation or coexistence. This is a war of extermination. Jake looked up from his controls. Transmission window is closing. We've got maybe 30 seconds before they jam us completely. Sarah spoke faster, urgency creeping into her voice. We are uploading all available data on their technology, language, and tactical capabilities. Earth must prepare for the possibility of further attacks. The Gruk see humanity as weak and will likely target other colonies or Earth itself if they are not stopped. Emily slammed her hand on the console. Data upload complete. This is our last transmission. Sarah continued. New Eden will not survive this attack, but we will fight to the last person to buy time for Earth to prepare. Tell our families that we died free, and that we believe in humanity's future among the stars. End transmission. Jake slammed his fist on the send button just as the communication array erupted in a shower of sparks. The quantum transmitter, pushed beyond its limits, finally gave up and died in a cascade of electrical failures. Did it get through? Sarah asked. Jake nodded grimly. It's away. Whether it reaches Earth depends on factors beyond our control now. Outside, the first Gruk drop ships were beginning their descent toward the colony. The battle for New Eden lasted 18 hours and was a testament to human determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The colonists fought with mining equipment, improvised weapons, and desperate courage, but they were farmers and scientists facing a professional army that had conquered a dozen worlds. Sarah crouched behind the wreckage of a transport vehicle, her borrowed plasma rifle nearly empty. Around her, the remnants of the colony's defense force fought a running battle through the residential sectors. The Gruk warriors were terrifying up close, massive creatures that seemed to shrug off wounds that would kill a human, their natural armor deflecting all but the most powerful weapons. Fall back to Sector 7! Jake shouted over the sound of explosions and alien war cries. His left arm was in a makeshift sling, but he was still coordinating the retreat with military precision. Emily crawled up beside Sarah, her face streaked with dirt and tears. The children's shelter in Sector 3 has been overrun, she reported. They're taking prisoners. Sarah's heart clenched. The Gruk weren't just conquering the colony. They were capturing humans for purposes she didn't want to imagine. Around them, the beautiful domes and gardens of New Eden burned, 30 years of human achievement reduced to rubble in a matter of hours. We can't hold them, Marcus said, reloading his weapon with shaking hands. There are too many of them, and they're too strong. Then we make our last stand count, Sarah replied. The communication center is still partially intact. If we can hold it long enough. A massive explosion rocked the ground nearby as a Gruk heavy weapon destroyed what remained of the agricultural complex. Through the smoke and flames, Sarah could see the alien warriors advancing, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. This is it, Jake said quietly. Everyone who can fight, take your positions. Everyone else, get to the emergency bunkers and pray to whatever gods you believe in. The final assault came at dawn. The Gruk, growing impatient with the stubborn human resistance, launched a coordinated attack that overwhelmed the colony's last defenses. Sarah watched in horror as her people were cut down or captured, their sacrifice buying precious minutes for the few who might escape. As Gruk warriors surrounded the command center, Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She activated the emergency beacon, a simple radio transmitter that would broadcast their location to any rescue ships that might come looking for them. Why? Jake asked, blood trickling from a head wound. Why call for help when there's no one left to help? Because someday, someone will come, Sarah replied. And when they do, they'll know what happened here. They'll know we didn't give up. The doors to the command center burst open, and Warlord Vashka himself strode in, his massive form filling the doorway. Behind him came a squad of Gruk warriors, their weapons trained on the surviving humans. "The soft skins fight harder than expected," Vashka rumbled, his voice carrying a note of grudging respect. "But the world is ours now. You will work for us, or you will feed our young." Sarah stood up slowly, her hands visible but her chin raised defiantly. "You may have won this battle, but you haven't won the war. Humanity will come for us." Vashka laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Let them come. We will be ready." As the surviving colonists were led away in chains, Sarah took one last look at the ruins of New Eden. Somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, a quantum message was racing toward Earth, carrying the hopes and fears of a dying colony. All they could do now was pray that someone was listening. Earth hung like a blue marble in the vast darkness of space, its cities glowing with the warm light of 10 billion souls. In the deep underground bunkers of the Solar Defense Command, Admiral Catherine Reeves stood before a wall of monitors displaying the status of humanity's far-flung colonies. At 62, Reeves was one of the oldest active officers in the Stellar Navy, her gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun and her uniform bearing the insignia of a career spent defending humanity's expansion into the stars. She had been instrumental in establishing the colony ships that had carried humanity to Alpha Centauri, Wolf 359, and a dozen other systems. "Admiral," called out Communications Officer Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with urgency. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Alpha Centauri system. It's not good." Reeves walked over to the communication station, her expression growing grave as she listened to Sarah Chen's desperate message. The quantum transmission was fragmented and distorted by the vast distance it had traveled, but the meaning was clear enough. "Play it again," Reeves ordered. The haunting words of New Eden's final transmission filled the command center. "We are under attack by a hostile alien force calling themselves the Gruk Imperium. This is a war of extermination. New Eden will not survive this attack." "When was this transmitted?" Reeves asked. "The quantum signature indicates it was sent approximately 6 weeks ago," Torres replied. "Travel time across the void." "Admiral, if they sent this message, it means New Eden is gone," Reeves finished grimly. "And we're facing humanity's first interstellar war." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. For decades, humanity had expanded into the stars with the assumption that they were alone, or at least that any alien civilizations they encountered would be peaceful. The idea of a hostile alien empire with superior technology was the stuff of nightmares. "What do we know about these Gruk?" Reeves asked. Dr. William Harrison, the Defense Command's chief xenobiologist, stepped forward with a tablet full of data. "Based on the information transmitted from New Eden, they appear to be a warrior culture with technology roughly equivalent to our own, possibly superior in some areas. They're resource-hungry and expansionist, which suggests they'll likely target other human colonies." "Our other colonies," Reeves said, her mind racing through the implications. "Wolf 359, Barnard Star, the research station at Tau Ceti, they're all potential targets." "Admiral," interrupted Captain James Mitchell, the head of fleet operations. "What are you thinking?" Reeves was quiet for a long moment, studying the star charts that showed humanity's scattered presence in the galaxy. Finally she spoke. "We're going to war, gentlemen. And we're going to need every ship, every soldier, and every weapon we can muster." The shipyards of Luna hummed with activity as humanity prepared for its first interstellar war. Massive vessels that had been designed for exploration and transport were being retrofitted with weapons and armor, their peaceful purposes transformed into instruments of war. Admiral Reeves stood on the observation deck of the U.S. Defiant, flagship of the hastily assembled Alpha Centauri relief fleet. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see dozens of ships taking shape in the zero-gravity construction bays, destroyers, cruisers, and the massive dreadnoughts that would serve as the backbone of humanity's offensive capability. "The Indomitable will be ready in 72 hours, reported Captain Mitchell, consulting his tablet. "The Vengeance and Retribution are undergoing final weapons calibration. All told, We'll have 47 ships ready for deployment. And the crews? Reeves asked. Volunteers from across the solar system, Mitchell replied. We've got experienced naval officers, merchant marine captains, and even some civilian pilots who've trained on simulators. They're not all professional soldiers, but they're motivated. That was an understatement. The news of New Eden's destruction had spread across human space like wildfire, triggering a wave of anger and determination that hadn't been seen since the resource wars of the previous century. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers eager to avenge the lost colony. What about our new weapons? Reeves asked. Dr. Sarah Kim, the fleet's chief weapons designer, stepped forward. We've been working around the clock to develop countermeasures based on the data from New Eden. The Gruks seem to rely heavily on energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. We've developed new armor composites that should provide better protection, and our new quantum torpedoes should be effective against their hull materials. Should be, Reeves repeated. Doctor, I need more than should be. The lives of 50,000 colonists depend on our success. Admiral, Kim said carefully, we're developing weapons to fight an enemy we've never encountered before, based on limited data from a colony that was overrun in less than a day. We're doing our best, but there are no guarantees in warfare. Reeves nodded, understanding the challenge they faced. They were venturing into the unknown, armed with hope and determination but uncertain of what they would find when they reached Alpha Centauri. What's the status of the other colonies? She asked. We've sent warning messages to all human settlements, Mitchell replied. Wolf 359 is fortifying their defenses, and Barnard's Star is evacuating non-essential personnel. The research station at Tau Ceti is going dark, complete communication blackout to avoid detection. Good. And the timeline for departure? The fleet will be ready to depart in 1 week, Mitchell said. Travel time to Alpha Centauri will be approximately 2 months using the new fusion drives. 2 months. Reeves hoped the survivors of New Eden could hold out that long. In the labor camps that had once been New Eden's residential districts, Sarah Chen worked alongside her fellow survivors to strip the rare earth elements from the colony's infrastructure. The Gruk had wasted no time in putting their human captives to work, forcing them to dismantle the very civilization they had spent decades building. Sarah's hands were raw and bleeding from handling the mining equipment, but she forced herself to keep working. Around her, other colonists toiled in silence, their faces gaunt from inadequate food and the psychological trauma of captivity. The Gruk were efficient captors. They provided just enough food and medical care to keep their slaves functional, but no more. Stay strong, whispered Marcus, who was working beside her at the extraction site. They can't break us if we don't let them. Sarah nodded, though she wasn't sure how much longer they could maintain their spirit. The Gruk had made it clear that resistance would be met with brutal punishment, and they had demonstrated their willingness to carry out that threat on several occasions. Any word from the other work groups? Sarah asked quietly. Jake's team is working on the communication array, Marcus replied. They're being forced to modify it for Gruk use, but he's been finding ways to sabotage the work without being detected. Emily's group is in the agricultural sector, helping them adapt our food production systems. Sarah felt a surge of pride at the mention of her people's continued resistance. Even in captivity, they were finding ways to fight back, to maintain their humanity in the face of alien oppression. Silence! Barked Overseer Craghull, a massive Gruk warrior who supervised the human work crews. Work faster, or tonight you go hungry! The threat wasn't empty. Sarah had seen what happened to workers who didn't meet their quotas: reduced rations, solitary confinement, and in some cases, simple execution. The Gruk viewed humans as disposable tools, useful only as long as they could work. As the day wore on, Sarah found herself thinking about the message they had sent to Earth. Had it gotten through? Was anyone coming to help them? Or were they truly alone, abandoned to live out their days as slaves to an alien empire? The answer came sooner than she expected. As Sarah and her work crew were returning to the barracks that evening, a brilliant flash of light lit up the night sky. For a moment, she thought it might be another Gruk ship arriving, but the light was different, cleaner, more focused. "Did you see that?" Marcus whispered excitedly. "That wasn't a Gruk ship. The engine signature was all wrong." Sarah felt her heart racing. Could it be? After 2 months of captivity, could rescue finally be at hand? The answer came the next morning when Warlord Vashka himself appeared at the labor camp, his expression grim. Behind him, a group of Gruk technicians worked frantically to set up what appeared to be a communication array. "Human slaves," Vashka announced, his voice carrying easily across the camp. "Your kind has come to reclaim you. They bring warships and weapons, thinking they can challenge the might of the Gruk Imperium." Sarah felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. Earth had responded to their message, but what chance did they have against the alien fleet that had so easily conquered New Eden? "You will watch as we destroy your rescuers," Vashka continued. "You will see that the Gruk are supreme, and that resistance is futile. Then you will return to your work, knowing that no salvation will come." But as the warlord spoke, Sarah noticed something in his voice, a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. The Gruk were preparing for battle, which meant they considered the approaching human fleet a real threat. For the first time in months, Sarah allowed herself to hope. The US Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Alpha Centauri system, its sensors immediately detecting the massive Gruk fleet surrounding the planet that had once been home to New Eden. Admiral Reeves stood on the bridge, her face grim as she studied the tactical display. 47 human ships versus approximately 200 Gruk vessels, reported Commander Lisa Park, the fleet's tactical officer. "They have us outnumbered more than 4-1. Quality over quantity," Reeves replied, though privately she wondered if their technological advantages would be enough to overcome such overwhelming odds. "What's the status of the colony?" "Long-range sensors are detecting human life signs on the planet's surface," Park reported. "It looks like the Gruk are using the survivors as slave labor. The good news is that means they're still alive. The bad news is that they're scattered across multiple locations." Reeves nodded, her mind racing through the tactical possibilities. A direct assault on the planet would likely result in massive civilian casualties, but they couldn't abandon the survivors to their fate. "Open a channel to the Gruk fleet," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying the brutal visage of Warlord Vashka. The alien leader's expression was one of amused contempt as he studied the human fleet. "So," Vashka rumbled, "the soft skins have come to die gloriously. I am impressed by your courage, if not your intelligence." "I am Admiral Catherine Reeves of the United Earth Navy," Reeves replied formally. "You have unlawfully attacked a human colony and enslaved its population. I demand the immediate release of all prisoners and your withdrawal from this system." Vashka's laugh was like grinding metal. "You demand? You are outnumbered, outgunned, and far from home. What makes you think you can demand anything?" "Because we're not here to negotiate," Reeves said calmly. "We're here to take our people home. The only question is whether you'll surrender peacefully or die fighting." The alien warlord's expression shifted from amusement to rage. "You dare threaten the Gruk Imperium? We have conquered a dozen worlds and enslaved 100 species. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed, and your world will be next. Then I guess we'll have to agree to disagree," Reeves replied. "All ships prepare for combat. This is Admiral Reeves to all hands. Today we fight not just for the survivors of New Eden, but for the future of humanity itself. Show these aliens what happens when they threaten our people." The transmission cut out, and both fleets began moving into battle formation. The battle began with a coordinated strike by human long-range missiles, their quantum warheads designed to exploit weaknesses in Gruk armor that had been identified from the New Eden data. The alien fleet, caught off guard by the unexpected technology, lost 3 ships in the opening salvo. "Direct hits on the enemy cruisers," reported Commander Park. "Their shields are down by 30% across the board." But the Gruk were quick to adapt. Their fleet scattered into a more defensive formation, their own weapons returning fire with devastating effect. The human destroyer Courageous took a direct hit from a Gruk energy cannon, its hull cracking open like an egg. "Courageous is gone," Park reported grimly. 47 souls lost. Admiral Reeves felt each loss like a physical blow, but she forced herself to remain focused on the larger battle. This was exactly the kind of engagement she had trained for her entire career, but the stakes had never been higher. All ships, execute attack pattern Delta, she ordered. Focus fire on their command vessels. Take out their leadership, and their coordination will suffer. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, their ships dancing through the void in complex patterns designed to maximize their firepower while minimizing their exposure to enemy weapons. The Gruk, despite their numerical advantage, were struggling to coordinate their response. They're not used to fighting an enemy that can match their technology, observed Commander Park. Their tactics are designed for overwhelming primitive opponents. But even as the human fleet scored several more hits, the sheer number of Gruk ships began to tell. The aliens were adapting quickly, their formation tightening to provide mutual support and concentrated firepower. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. I'm receiving a transmission from the planet. It's weak, but it's definitely human. Put it through, Reeves ordered. The voice that crackled through the speakers was weak but determined. This is Dr. Sarah Chin, New Eden Colony. We can see the battle from here. The Gruk are moving prisoners toward their ships. I think they're planning to use us as human shields. Reeves felt her heart sink. The one scenario she had hoped to avoid was now unfolding before her eyes. Dr. Chin, can you get the prisoners to safety? Negative, Sarah replied. We're too heavily guarded, and they're watching us too closely. But Admiral, there's something else. The Gruk have been mining our rare earth deposits. Their ships are loaded with materials that could power their expansion for decades. If they get away... Sarah didn't need to finish the sentence. If the Gruk fleet escaped with New Eden's resources, they would have the raw materials to build an even larger fleet and threaten other human colonies. Understood, Reeves said. Hold tight, Dr. Chen. We're coming for you. But as she watched the tactical display, Admiral Reeves realized that she was facing an impossible choice: save the prisoners and let the Gruk escape with the resources they needed to threaten humanity, or prevent the alien expansion and risk the lives of 50,000 innocent people. It was a decision that would define the future of human expansion into the stars. The battle raged across the Alpha Centauri system as both fleets maneuvered for advantage. The human ships, smaller and more agile than their Gruk counterparts, used hit-and-run tactics to avoid the aliens' devastating firepower. But the Gruk were learning, adapting their formations to counter human tactics. Admiral, reported Commander Park, we've lost the Vigilant and Resolute. The Gruk are concentrating their fire on our destroyers. Admiral Reeves studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The human fleet was holding its own, but barely. They had managed to destroy nearly 30 Gruk ships, but the aliens still held a significant numerical advantage. What's the status of the prison ships? She asked. 3 large transports have loaded human prisoners and are moving toward the edge of the system, Park replied. They're being escorted by a squadron of Gruk cruisers. Reeves felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Every decision she made would have consequences that rippled across human space. If she focused on saving the prisoners, the main Gruk fleet might escape. If she tried to stop the fleet, the prisoners would be lost. Admiral, interrupted Lieutenant Torres, I'm receiving another transmission from the planet. It's Jake Morrison. The voice that came through the speakers was tense but determined. Admiral Reeves, this is Commander Morrison. I'm coordinating resistance efforts on the ground. We've managed to sabotage several Gruk installations, but we need your help. What do you need, Commander? The Gruk have a major mining operation in the northern mountains. They're using human slaves to extract rare earth elements. If you can take out their orbital elevators, we can trap a significant portion of their fleet on the planet's surface. Reeves felt a spark of hope. What about the prisoners? We're working on that, Jake replied. My daughter Emily has been organizing the younger prisoners. They're planning a coordinated escape during the confusion of the orbital bombardment. It was a desperate plan, but it might be their only chance. Reeves made her decision. All ships, new target priorities, she announced. Primary objective is the destruction of the Grok orbital elevators. Secondary objective is the prevention of enemy fleet escape. All units, execute attack pattern Omega. The human fleet moved with deadly precision, their ships converging on the massive orbital structures that connected the planet's surface to the Grok fleet. The aliens, caught off guard by the sudden change in tactics, struggled to respond. Direct hits on Elevator Alpha, reported Commander Park. Structure is collapsing. On the planet's surface, the destruction of the orbital elevators sent shockwaves through the Grok occupation forces. Suddenly cut off from their orbital support, the alien ground forces found themselves facing a coordinated human uprising. Emily Morrison crouched behind a pile of mining equipment, her heart pounding as she watched the Grok guards struggle to maintain order in the chaos following the orbital bombardment. Around her, dozens of human prisoners waited for her signal, their faces grim with determination. Remember, Emily whispered to the group. We're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to create enough confusion to allow the evacuation shuttles to land. Hit hard, hit fast, and then get to the extraction points. The plan was desperate and dangerous, but it was their only chance. The orbital bombardment had knocked out most of the Grok communication systems, and the alien guards were struggling to coordinate their response to the human uprising. Go! Emily shouted. The prisoners erupted from their hiding places, attacking the confused Grok guards with improvised weapons and desperate courage. Emily led a group toward the communications center, hoping to establish contact with the human fleet. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. The Grok were individually stronger and better armed than their human captives, but they were outnumbered and confused. For every human who fell, two more seemed to take their place. Emily! Shouted Dr. Chen, who was leading another group toward the medical facility. The shuttles are coming in! Emily looked up to see human ships descending through the atmosphere, their weapons providing covering fire for the evacuation. But the Grok were rallying, their heavy weapons beginning to take a toll on the human forces. We need to buy them more time, Emily realized. Everyone, fall back to the secondary positions. We're going to make them fight for every inch. The battle for the prison camps raged for hours, with human prisoners fighting desperately to hold their positions while the evacuation shuttles loaded survivors. Emily found herself fighting alongside people she had known all her life. Teachers, farmers, engineers, all of them transformed by necessity into soldiers. Emily! Called out Marcus, who was helping coordinate the evacuation. The last shuttle is loading. We need to go now. Emily took one last look at the ruins of New Eden, the colony that had been her home for most of her life. Then she turned and ran toward the shuttle, carrying with her the hopes and memories of a world that was lost but not forgotten. As the evacuation shuttle lifted off, Emily could see the continuing space battle above. The human fleet was still fighting, still holding the line against the Grok invasion. Whatever happened next, they had saved as many people as they could. Now it was up to Admiral Reeves and her fleet to finish what they had started.